Welcome to the Together We Thrive podcast. Here we have is Dave Stones. Dave, how are we doing?
I'm really good, John. You?
Absolutely wonderful, mate. So, Dave, you're
Good.
the marketing, sales and marketing director at BBPress, which you bring 20 years worth of experience in this space from directorship in 6 different roles, and is that right? 6 different roles and 10 different as sales manager.
Yeah, pretty much. It's yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, you've obviously been looking at my LinkedIn profile, John.
Always. You gotta do your recon. You gotta do your research.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Good man. Tell me a little bit about this. I mean, what have you seen that's happened in the last decade? In mind, the last 2.
I think the first thing is when you kind of say 20 years, it's like it genuinely don't feel 20 years. I mean, I was having this conversation the other day. It just, it's just gone like so quickly, and to think 20 years, it's just like wow. I think a lot's changed. And it's amazing how the same conversations are coming up at the moment where you reflect on, I guess, with lockdown and everything, it gives you time to reflect on where you've been and what you've done. I think for me, the biggest thing that's kind of changed is, but then again, it all kind of went into chaos when the pandemic came along. But I think the biggest change that I've seen over the years is that link with marketing, that connectivity, and about how, I guess, over the years it was always like 2 separate functions, and now it's really great that that's kind of coming together and it's seen as one, and they're equally as important. So I think that's the biggest change. I think in terms of just kind of being pragmatic, I suppose, in terms of like skills needed in order to, if I take my management role away and just put my salesperson hat on, which is, something that I think it's really important that as a sales manager, sales director, head of sales, whatever you want to call it, that you still roll your sleeves up and you get involved. And we had this conversation earlier. I think for me, it's really important that when you're leading a team, that you have the ability still to roll your sleeves up and get involved. And from a total sales perspective, out and out salesperson, which if you cut me in half, that's pretty much what I am. I think that's changed a lot, obviously, and it's changed because of the plethora of kind of tools, if you like, that are available to you as a salesperson. We've had this conversation many times before, and I guess if you go back to your days, like in your first job where you're like knocking on doors and stuff, the tools that you had available then are nowhere near the amount of tools or the quality of tools that you've got available now. So I'll probably get shot down for saying this, but I don't find sales difficult. Yeah, I think that with the tools that you've got available, I think it's not easy right now because of the pandemic, but in terms of like the actual going through the process, going through the sales process and getting that new customer, I think it's easier now than what it's ever been. And that's not me taking anything away from the fact that some people do find it quite difficult, but I just mean with the resources that's available to you, I believe it's easier now than what it was 20 years ago. But I don't know how you feel about that.
I think it's it's really interesting in terms of what you're saying there, because I think that what this pandemic's done, I agree, it's made it very challenging, but I think it's only challenging if that's the way you look at it. I think what it has done is it's almost humanized people more than they've ever done before, because they realize that everyone's got challenges and problems, whereas once upon a time they're picking up that phone up, they're cold calling or they're sending that messages and they don't really give a shit about the person on the other end. They're just trying to sell products. Now what they're thinking is actually, shit, that person has got issues. They've got kids hanging on their legs and their feet, and actually I can relate to that a lot more now. So if they're giving me a shitty answer or give me some pushback, I can maybe relate a little bit better now, so I can understand, and by doing that it allows me to communicate better and really try and help and serve them better as well. And I think that that's a really good thing that's come out of this, which then reinforces what you're saying about actually it kind of makes it easier.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the word I'm about to say is using the word like humility. I've never heard that word used so much in my entire life than over the last 6 months, really,
Yeah,
6 to 12 months. And it's quite interesting what you're saying, because, you know, it is, and people, you do have to give a shit. Like you say, it's not anybody that's in that kind of transactional world, which is just so robotic, and people not showing any humility or empathy. It's just not going to work. And I do agree. That's been a real focus for people over the last kind of 6, 12 months. Yeah.
definitely. So I was on Clubhouse. Are you on Clubhouse yet, by the way?
No, I'm not.
No.
I've seen the products. I've seen a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. We've just started using a similar. I guess it's kind of similar, but a product called Key. But as I understand with Clubhouse, is that more audio,
It's
audio
audio. It's
chats?
only
Yeah,
audio. Yeah. But I mean,
yeah,
the reason I've referenced that is I was it last Wednesday or the Wednesday before I did a first, like it's like a room, and you can, so we were the panel, and then you got people asking questions and stuff, and we
yeah,
finished by one of the questions that were asked at the end is like, do you know what's one of the biggest tips that you can have that you can give somebody this year in terms of how they can market effectively, sell better, and do stuff. And they're all asking, like they're all saying, use video, do this, do audio, whatever it is, podcast. And I just said, do you know, just give a shit.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
that's the best advice I can give anybody this year is, you know,
yeah,
like don't worry about the automation and the tools and the video and all that kind of stuff. That's there. Do you know, give a shit, and you'll sell better. Like
yeah,
ultimately, that's going to make a big
for
difference.
sure. And I think, to add to that, something else which comes up on a fairly regular basis as well is just be honest.
Yeah,
I think that's really important as well,
yeah.
because people will see through it, and like you say,
Why
give
do
a
you
shit,
think?
be honest.
Why do you think people find it so hard to be honest, though?
I don't
Do
know.
you think that's a sales? Is it a sales trait?
Maybe. I think over the years, I think people will always try and find a way to add leverage, for want of a better word. And I think, depending on the kind of business that you are, the kind of person you are, you might stretch the truth. You'll have been in situations before where people are just damn right just lying, in order to, and I think that kind of boils down to the kind of person that you are. But if we take that right back as well, it really boils down to your own individual values, but the values of a business as well. And
Uh,
you know, I think
yeah,
that's happening a lot more. We're having, in terms of our business at BBPress, um, we're doing a lot of work with sustainability at the moment, and the environment, and it's really at the forefront of everybody's minds. And when you start to look at that, you get a lot of content, and there's so many smoke and mirrors, it's unbelievable, right? And the point is that when it's a subject that people don't really know that much about, yes, they've heard of it, yes, they'll have listened to and seen David Attenborough on TV and doing his stuff, quite rightly so, he's an amazing guy. um, that's what they know about it. But when you start to get involved into the nitty gritty, in terms of how can we as a business or an organization or
sure.
a humanity make a difference,
Yeah,
there are so many stretches of the truth, for want of a better word, and
of
and and
course.
and people will see through it. And I think in that instance, it's about just being honest.
Yeah,
um, but I think, to answer your question, I think that bit about being honest, I just think ultimately, when you get into that, I don't know, call it fight or flight mode,
hmm,
some people will do or say anything, right?
yeah.
And
Do you think it's bad leadership, bad management that's the crushing them? You've got a target. Make sure you get your dials in. Make you do whatever you need to do to get that deal. Is it bad leadership, bad management?
possibly, it could possibly be that, in certain instances, that people react to pressure in different ways. I've been in situations over, that 20 years where, you've had certain, you've been in certain environments which are really pressurized.
Hmm.
um, I think you have to be careful, and I've seen it firsthand. And I'll be honest, I've been involved firsthand over at the beginning of my career. The problem is that pressure shows through. So, you know, if you are under pressure as a salesperson, whether you're performing or not, or just whether the business is not performing, I think that pressure comes through in your voice, in the way you are. You know, you might typically do a quote for somebody, you can tell the guys that are under pressure, because an hour after receiving a quote, they're on the phone going, "What's the price looking like? When can I start?" What, trying to do the close quite quickly. So I think that pressure can show through, and you could argue that that is a you know that is either one or two things. It's a kind of bad leadership, or it's the fact that that individual just doesn't handle that amount of pressure very well.
Yeah.
It's going back to the analogy of and I always kind of take it back to football, is that as a football manager, you've got different players that react differently to different situations. You've got the players that need their arm around the shoulder. You've got other players that need a real good kicking up the backside, and people react to things in different ways. So yeah, the leadership. I think the thing about the leadership is that what a good leader would definitely be able to do is identify which of his team are struggling, and do something about it. And I think that's one of the things at the moment where, and I actually put this on, I think it was on LinkedIn the other day. It was I can't remember. I replied to a post, and it was about leaders in the pandemic and this, that, and the other. And I kind of said something like, I wonder how many leaders are actually rolling the sleeves up and leading from the front, rather than sat in their ivory towers just barking orders. Sure. And so for me, I think it's really important that I want to be that person that that is seen to be trying to make a difference and lead from the front, not just letting the guys sink. And that's just me.
Yeah, totally. No, I get that. And I think that it's interesting in terms of when you were talking about the proposal, the quotation, and I think that's a big thing that I see. What I'm teaching people is, to come away from just sending that PDF. Actually, jump on some video, whether it's Vidyard or even just YouTube or whatever it is, on a private URL, and actually do a Zoom where you record yourself talking them through the proposal, saying, right, guys, so here's the things that you said are important. It's this. This is what our solution looks like, which solves them problems right there as well. And the investment, rather than price, because obviously we know investment sounds a lot better. The investment for this is X, and that's what the rules, and then go through the result, and then send that across to them on a video. And if you're using Vidyard, obviously you can track everything.
Yeah, totally. I think, one of the things that we've made a big change to our business over the last kind of 12, 18 months is Vidyard. And, in terms of that scenario, the way that we now do things, and we have, rules is a bit of a strong word, but kind of guidance is to say, look, if you're doing a quote for the first time for a brand new customer, irrelevant of what the value of that quote is, what I'd like you to do is send them across a video. The quote would be actually on the screen, and you'll be in the bottom corner talking as you're scrolling up and down the quote. What we also do is have some pretty simple guidance that kind of goes, look, if it's a quote that's worth over, £2,000, for example, do the same thing. So that's definitely been a big change in our business, where we've used technology to try and, because like you say, if you're sending that proposal over, and it's just funny little things. I like to use the word proposal as opposed to quotation. Don't know why, it just seems to work. Like the example you used earlier. I think when you send that over, if all you're sending is a quote, all you're ever going to be compared against is a thing at the bottom, which is the price.
The price,
So what we've tried to do is have that totally embedded within our business, that when we send out a quote over a certain value or the quote for a new customer, we're building a story behind it. And if you think about it, it's no different from 5 years ago or 10 years ago, where you'd email the quote a customer and you'd say, right, I'm going to ring you in a minute, and you talk about it over the phone. I think the difference is the good thing about using a product like Vidyard, or any video, doing it as a video, is that the customer or prospect can watch that at their leisure, daytime, nighttime, middle of the night, and they're not asking queries, because if you've done a good enough job in the first place of identifying what the potential queries are going to be before you've even done the quote, you can answer those queries as part of that video send. So I think that's been really, really key for us, John, to be honest.
It works really well. And I think as well, what you can really do is you can really gel. And and you can really gel with the champion that you've got in that business as well. You know, the actual whoever it is, whether it's the sales director, MD, like whoever it is. And I think that the good thing with the video is, like you say, if I'm sending it to Dave, but Dave needs Barry to sign it off,
Yeah.
then Dave can send a video to Barry that makes it a lot easier than him trying to reiterate it as well. And I suppose one of the things that I like to do with things like that is actually address the video to Barry, but bring Dave into it as well. So saying, hi,
Yeah.
Barry, you know, I've been working really closely with Dave, you know, and this is what we've talked about so far as well. You know, what a great guy. He's asked me to put this together as well. And you know, and it's all like Dave's like, shit, this is great. It makes you feel special.
Yeah, exactly. I think you can only do that though, and it comes back to a lot of times when we talk about this, is you can only do that if you've done your own work in the first place, you know.
Yeah.
And that's really about those key questions that, you know, we talk
Yeah.
about often as part of that discovery call. Yeah. It's all about who's the decision maker, isn't it?
Yeah,
Without that information, it's all that video is ever going to be is sent to the guy that doesn't make the decision
just
and doesn't
noise.
send it on because he doesn't want his boss to think that he thinks that everybody thinks that he's making the decisions, you know. So yeah,
Absolutely. And it's like it's having that upfront contract. Do you
yeah,
know, like so, Dave, this is what's going to happen. Do you know, blah 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 blah. After this, you know, like we're going to then send this to the next stage, which usually, from past experience with companies like yourself, it has to go to the MD for them to sign it off. Do you know, if
yeah,
once we've gone through this, are we okay to proceed to that next step?
yeah,
And
yeah, for sure.
you put that upfront contract in play, and Dave's under no illusion about what's going to happen next. He knows that this next step involves Dave having to go to see the MD to say, can we sign this off?
Yeah, no, for sure, mate. Yeah, it has been like, don't underestimate it, a real game changer for us, you know, video,
Yeah, it's
and
good.
not just in terms of contractual level, like even internal communication, you know,
Yeah,
like hours and hours and hours that typically spent typing out like long and laborious emails, you know, just send them a quick video, 30 seconds. You can
yeah.
say something in 30 seconds that'll take you 10 minutes
10 minutes of time.
to
Yeah,
type.
yeah,
And then, you know, the other side, which has been like a real key point for us, is videos to engage with new prospects. You know, we were able to, you know, engage in a way that we were not able to before, and the response rates are remarkable. You know, because when we went into the pandemic, there were some stats that came out from HubSpot. I don't have them to hand, but it basically showed you email open rates literally dropping off a cliff.
yeah,
So, you know, the minute everybody starts to work at home, the minute
yeah,
everybody starts to go on furlough,
yeah,
the stats of worldwide email open rates just drop
yeah,
off a cliff.
yeah,
What did start to happen though was web hits and page views started to go up. That's because people had more time at home to
browse.
search and do all this kind of stuff and do their own research. So while emails went down, web hits went up. What we did very cleverly, I suppose, going back to kind of March, April, was really upped our video, and we was like, right, so people are opening emails, people are answering work phones, nobody's really giving out personal mobile numbers because obviously why would they? So what we then did is we switched to messaging on social media platforms, because what you can obviously see quite easily is when somebody was last active on things like LinkedIn, you know. So you know, you can see when you send them a message, not always, but typically what will happen is when they read the message, it will put their picture in the bottom right hand corner so you can see whether it's been read or not.
Yeah,
So you started to see when people were last active, and you was like, hang on a minute, this person's kind of either on furlough or working from home. They're not answering my emails, but I can see that they're actually liking stuff on social media or commenting on stuff on social media. So quite quickly we changed our strategy to be more of a, I guess, a social strategy, as opposed to the traditional emails or phones.
yeah,
And again, dead basic, really. You know, not rocket surgery as I call it, but it just, you know, it just worked.
yeah.
And the point is that we all adapt, and you try different things, and if it works, you do it, and if it doesn't, you try something else.
Exactly. I think that that's the thing is that sales now more so than probably ever. I think you need to become a scientist. So test things, split tests, like what
Yeah,
works, what doesn't work. If email works, do more email. Do you know, like if calls work, do more calls. Like just keep testing and become that like mad scientist. You know, like start
yeah.
exploring around and looking what's going
I,
on.
Totally agree. I mean, how have you found, like, and I was having this conversation with somebody, we've just recruiting for a new salesperson actually, and I was having this conversation with a recruitment company the other day. But how have you found, and I guess you might be slightly different, so you might want to answer it in terms of like the way that some of your clients work, but how have you found hours at the moment? Like, by that I mean, when are you having them conversations? When are you engaging with people? Because I'll be honest, at this moment in time, I typically get more engagement way after 5 o'clock than what I've ever done.
Mm.
So, I'm having conversations with MDs, CEOs, marketing directors on LinkedIn, for example, at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so I just wondered how you're finding things.
but
I know you'll be different, by the way,
yeah,
but
no, it's a good question, and I think that firstly, before I answer it, what I will say is that I think you've got to be very careful in having these dialogues outside of your traditional business hours, because what you're actually doing is you're building a rod for your own back in many ways, because then you
yeah,
become accessible at all
yeah,
fucking times of the day,
yeah, yeah,
and that
yeah,
becomes dangerous going forward, especially when you start working with each other.
yeah,
But I'm the same. I've had people messaging me back, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and it's hard to do, but I've been very tempted to respond, and I'm like, do you know what? No, I'm going to do it in the morning.
yeah.
Or if I can, if it's on email, I'll reply, but I'll schedule it to go out in the morning,
Right. Okay.
because
Yeah.
as you're aware, you can do that with HubSpot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I'm just very cautious that I don't want to become too accessible, because
Yeah.
I want to keep my life in order as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And I could definitely see that from your perspective, but I'm just thinking, if you're out and out as a sales guy, desperate to get numbers in. I'm just thinking of how people are at the world at the moment, desperate to get numbers in. you know, I know those conversations are going off like all the time, and I just think it's interesting that because people are, and it's probably because people are working from home, they're probably struggling with that
Switch
that
off.
switch off time.
And a lot of people are.
Yeah,
A lot of people
yeah,
are. I think there's also a bit of psychology play that comes into this as well. You know yourself, like when you don't have something that you want it even more. And
yeah,
you'll be, like, especially if you're a kind of person that's a little bit of an overthinker as well, you'll be running 1,000 different solutions and orientations around in your head, thinking, what's going on? Like, why aren't they responded? Do they not want my business? Do they want my business? Are they not interested? Are they like,
yeah,
and you'll be running around all these different things, and then when they respond the next day, you're like, oh my god, they responded. Like, here we go.
yeah,
And so I think that, again, yourself, sales is about slowing it down. It's not
yeah.
about go, 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 go. It's about knowing when to go, but when to slow it down as
It's
well.
about
And
control, isn't it? To a certain
control.
extent, it's
Yeah.
about controlling things at the right pace. And there are times where typically in a business where you do need to speed things up because the pipeline's not great, or I don't know, a job's dropped off on a press tomorrow morning, and now we've got to try and fill it with something else, otherwise it's
Yeah.
going to be stood still. So you know, but I think you're right. It's all about getting control. And I think if we're all honest with each other, nobody wants to live a life at 150 miles an hour. Yeah, you can do that at 20 years old, but you can't do that at 50 years old. So you're
You,
right. I think
it's recovery time, and
yeah,
it's one of the things I've said for many years, which, it's a bit controversial, but I stand by it. Is that I don't think stress is a bad thing. I think
no,
stress is a really good thing. Like you look at it in a concept of growing your guns. Now, you want to build some muscles and get some big arms, you have to put them under a massive amounts of stress, so much stress that the actual muscle rips
yeah,
and repairs stronger.
yeah,
The thing that makes them like grow is not necessarily just the ripping; it's the recovery time.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that we're the same. We're just one big muscle, aren't we? A muscle
yeah,
brain, like, and so I think that we can stress ourselves. Like the head's always going to give up before the body. The body can take so much more than what the mind can. The mind,
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
brain, it surrenders way too easy. Joe, we
yeah,
talk ourselves out of shit.
yeah,
And I believe that if we start to understand that better and give ourselves ample recovery time, like stress is not the enemy, recovery time is.
yeah, yeah,
So I love it though. I love all this kind of stuff. It's just so fascinating, and I think that one of the things that I've always kind of dialed back into is understanding you, because I find once you, like, for me personally, the more I understand about John, the better I understand everybody else. Do you
Yeah,
know, everyone else makes so much more sense the more I discover about me.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that
Are you still discovering stuff about you even now? Do you know? Like
always,
always, yeah,
always, always,
yeah,
always, always, yeah. And I think it's having a bit of curiosity around it as well. It's like, do you know, something's really triggered you, and you're feeling a little bit like disgruntled by it all, maybe even jealous or whatever it is,
yeah,
and you think, well, why is that?
yeah,
Like, what's made me feel that way? And then dig into that a little bit and think, oh, well, actually, do you know, now I'm starting to peel away some of these layers. Actually, that makes sense. Like, why? But like, that makes total sense why I'm feeling that way. Now, what could I do to change that?
yeah,
And I think that like that self discovery and that personal development over yourself is just so powerful. But I think at the same time, there's certain things that happen naturally with age. You know, like the older you get, the less fucks you tend to give. Do you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
Like,
I think your total outlook changes, and you know your priorities change, don't they? And it can be anything from relationships to financial to work. I think there are so many changes that go on through your life, that everything's like interconnected, and I think what you want out of all those different parts, whether it be, love, relationships, work, or financial, I always say you've got them three things that should always be working in tandem, with each other. And I think throughout your, if you just talk about work for a second, throughout your work career, I think things change. I've met so many people that they're on a real mission, and they get themselves into a job, and then they get complacent, and then they look around and realize they're mid-50s or whatever, and go, right, things aren't quite working out, what am I going to do now? um I think for me, I just don't ever see me being that complacent person. um I think we've talked about our backgrounds before, John, and I think the thing about me is that, and it is a blessing and it's a curse at the same time, is that as a person, it's in my DNA to always want more, right? And that don't mean I always want more money, or that don't mean I always want more things, but I always want to better myself, and I don't ever rest. I don't mean physically rest, but my situation, my persona, it doesn't ever rest, and I'm always looking for, you know, how can we do this better? How can we do this more efficiently? How can we do this is going to give more impact? And I think that is driven from from our childhoods, or from our background, and I think that's something that you've either got or you haven't inside you, and it is a blessing and it is a curse. And I think that's sometimes one of the things with me and my team, is that the way I operate is I have a lot of energy, right? And for me, it's really important that people around me have a lot of energy. And like when I go back to playing football, I always want to play with the best players possible because they make me look good, and that, to a certain extent, is the same with work. I want my team to have energy. I want them to be dynamic. I want them to be creative, right? Um, but I get really pissed off sometimes when they don't show that same energy. And I think one of my downfalls is, um, I expect people to have that same energy and those same values. And I think the older that you get, you realize that that's not fair, you know. And I think, like I say, it could be a blessing or a curse. That's the
I
thing.
mean, I get that, I really do, and I like one of the ways that Gary V looks at that, and he says, like, you know, if you want your team to have the same desire, motivation, and values of you, and you want the business, then give them a share of the business.
Yeah,
You know, give them part of the business if you want them to feel the same way as you. And I think that makes total sense as well. And I think that what we have to come to realize is that unless they are vested in your business, like they're never going to care for it the same way as you. They're
no,
like, and you're right that if your DNA is to naturally serve, then that's always going to change as well. And if you're a natural giver, then that's going to be a very hard battle for you to have, because you're going to see this, and it actually frustrates you. You know, this is one of the things I'm talking about developing in ourselves. Is if you're a natural giver, the danger that you have is that you give so much and you don't get anything back, or you get very little back, and very soon you become resentful and you start
Yeah,
thinking, do you know what? This dick is giving nothing to me. I've done all this for them, and I've done all this for you, and what do I get?
yeah, yeah,
And it's like, but dude, are
yeah,
you asking? And it's like, well, no, I'm not asking. It should just happen. And it's like, but that's not the way the world works. You know, you've got to go and ask for this stuff.
yeah.
And
I have to chuckle sometimes. Like I'm going, you know, I've made a lot of mistakes, you know, in my career, I suppose. Well, I won't necessarily mistakes, but you know, maybe made some wrong decisions and this, that, and the other. And I always remember, like, just as a sales guy, out and out sales guy on the road, you know, bit of an ego, I guess. You know, bringing in the numbers, doing really well, and at the time, you know, when you're early 20s or whatever, you know, your director at the time's kind of going, you know, we're always wanting more and this, that, and the other, and get a little bit of a chip on your shoulder and like, bollocks, I'm not going to do that. Why am I doing that? What are you asking me to do that for? I'm smashing numbers. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Yeah, piss off, kind of thing. And I was a right argumentative so and so at times, and it's only like couldn't take criticism at all. Yeah, you know, didn't take it well. You know, probably was like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And I have to chuckle because it's only really in recent years where um, I've been able to like just matured, I suppose, and controlled that side of me. So when somebody's on the other side of me and they kind of giving it that ego, like, you know, don't ask more for me and this, that, and the other, you kind of just don't bite back. And I that kind of going off piste a little bit, but that's the biggest change that I've noticed in myself: the ability to listen, not react, because I am a very, very, very impulsive person, right?
right,
Like, like if I make a decision that I want to go out and get something, I get it. I don't have the ability sometimes to kind of slow down. But in my professional life, I have, for whatever reason, found that ability to kind of step back, count to 10, and not react instantly.
yeah,
And I do chuckle because like all those challenges, and I must have been a right little arse like in my early 20s, and it's only now that you get to, you know, mid 40s or whatever, and you realise what an arse you probably were. But I just guess that's maturity, really.
yeah, definitely so, definitely. I was a terrible shit me as a kid. Oh God, I was honestly. I remember, do you know, like Christmas time,
Yeah,
when you see your parents and they decide they're going to embarrass you, they're going to tell all your stories about you growing up, and so I get this every year, do you know, from my parents, and so one of the stories that my mom consistently tells is, you know, Jonathan was such a stubborn little child. I remember even at nursery, this is what she says, at nursery, you know, I'd come to say, come on now, it's time to go home, put all the toys away, and no, Jonathan stood there with his arms crossed saying, I'm not doing it, you do it. And she's like, put them away now. And I'm like, no, you do it. And she's like, Jonathan, put those toys away. I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. Don't want to do it. And she says, like, she's literally grabbing my hand and doing it for me and stuff.
yeah,
And I've always been like really stubborn. And I think that one of the things that I actually think is a strength is the fact that I'm quite stubborn. But at the same time, you've got to know when enough is enough, and you've got to be able to surrender a little as well, because you can't just go, you know, bull in a china shop about everything that you want to do. I think that that's a lesson to understand more about yourself. But you're right, like all the way through my childhood, teens, and probably up until I was maybe even 30, you know, I would just, you know, very, very focused on what I wanted, and I got it, like by
yeah,
hook or by crook. You know, one way or another, I was stubborn enough to do it. And I think that that's a gift, but I think it can be a burden as well.
yeah. What do you think about like if you look at all the, you know, qualities and stuff in terms of like salespeople, like, and and I know we've spoken about this before, but where you've got qualities that are deep rooted within successful salespeople, right? So I often get said to me that salespeople are selfish, right? So if we just take that thing there and it's an, you know, it is a little statement. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think all the best people are selfish, and is that a bad thing?
I think that what we probably have to do is take a step back and like, what is selfish?
Yeah,
Do you know
yeah,
what is actually selfish? Is it bettering yourself, or is it that I'm just, you know, stubborn
Yeah.
about wanting to get a result, either that result for the client or for myself. Like, where's that selfishness come from there?
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily, personally, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with being selfish, because
Yeah.
I think that, like, life is about you. Do you know? It makes me. I often make it laugh when it's like when you see people say, "Oh, they think the world revolves around them," and it's like, well, it kind of does.
For them.
Do you
Yeah.
know? For them, it really does. Like,
Yeah.
so, do you know, why would you not want to have the nice things in life that you want? But again, you've got to realize that every action has a consequence behind it. And I think that that's the real thing to remember is, like, what you've got is choices and consequences. And as long as you can live with the consequence of that choice, then life is good. But
Yeah.
if you start dicking around and that makes you lose your job, or your partner leaves you, or whatever it is, and you can't live with that consequence, don't make that choice in the first place.
Yeah. 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 No, I get it, and I just think that if you look at um, you know, successful salespeople that you meet, I just think that they all share some form of similar qualities. Whether it be like, we talked about the other day, a little bit OCD or a little bit selfish or a little bit, this or that. There's just something that, it's going back to that debate about can you can you learn to be a great salesperson, or are you actually born one? And we could talk about that, forever and a day. And it's probably a little bit of both. I do. It's like anything in life. You hear so many inspirational stories of people that what's happened to people in the past has defined where they go in the future. Um, and I do think that some really good salespeople that I've met in the years or worked with over the years, they've all got that fire in the belly, if that's what you want to call it, that desire to want to either better themselves, escape a situation which their parents were in, i.e., lived in a particular area, or,
Mm-hmm.
went to a particular school, or didn't really have much of anything. There's that burning inner desire to always want to better themselves.
Yeah.
And I think if everybody's honest, that would be the case. And again, I don't know what you think about that.
I, I, I think it's a really interesting debate, Dave, because I think that what often's frustrated me in the past is when people are complacent with that. Well, no, not even complacent with that. Content with that. You know, some people are just very happy living in that council estate, driving whatever car it is that they've got, struggling every month, but they know what they've got. You know, like,
Yeah,
and I think that some people are just very happy with that, and I can't understand it. I'm just like, dude, like, you're tapping yourself out, spending £200 on a t-shirt, but you're living in a council house, living on borrowed time, and it's just like why would you not want to change that? And like,
yeah,
I think that the thing that I have to then say is, like like who gives a shit, John? Like, they're happy. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
if that's
yeah,
what they want to do, like, all right, I've bettered myself. You know, I've come out of a council estate. That's where I was brought up, and I loved it. It was the best childhood in the world. I won't want to live there now. You know, I worked hard to get out of there. I live in a really affluent area, like, drive nice cars, have nice things, live in a big house. Like, I've worked incredibly hard to get all that kind of stuff. But that's me. And I think that, to come back to what you're saying there, is that I think you've got two different types of people, haven't you? You have got the ones that just, are quite content with the struggle because they have certainty in that struggle. They know that
yeah,
what happens consistently, and they've got certainty there. Whereas others, we're like, we want that variety, we want that spice of life, so to
yeah,
speak, and we find significance from driving forward and moving and looking for the next things all the time, and that's our certainty in a weird kind of way. Um, I think that, just to come back to the salespeople talk, what we're on about there, I think what's really interesting with salespeople is what is a good salesperson? That's the question. Is it the ones that are the high rollers now and again, or is it the steady eddies? The ones that they never set the world on fire, but they just produce.
Mm. I think again, it's a real difficult question, and without sitting on a fence and getting splinters at my backside, I think it totally depends on the type of business that you're involved in. I mean, to take our business for example, we print, we do communication material, we're working with marketing departments, and we've got some big hungry beasts that need filling in terms of machinery, right? So for us, it's about being consistent. It's about hitting your monthly quota. It's about getting work in that keeps our machines busy, but not too busy. And where you've got these massive peaks and troughs, they're no really good for our kind of business, because what happens unless you've got people doing different peaks and troughs at different times, of course, then obviously you can manage it. But typically, when we look at our sales forecasting, yes, there is a little bit of seasonal variation in there for Christmas time and school holidays and that kind of stuff. But pretty much we want to go on a consistent line, right?
Yeah.
And me personally, I would rather have 4 people in my team that are consistently performing at a level which keeps us busy than people that are doing 100 grand one month, 5 grand the next, 100 grand one month, 5 grand the next.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find, if you really look behind those figures, what that means in a lot of the time is the person that's delivering the sales are trying to be all things to all people. And what it actually does is they get the sale, then they manage the sale, they get more sales and manage more sales, and they get to a point where they're engrossed in the detail, and what they can't do is consistently prospect at a high level for new business.
Yeah.
So they bring in all the work, going up, more work, more work. As that work's coming in, no prospecting time, work.
Boom.
Work ends, project ends, bang.
Yeah.
And that's because they've not been consistently prospecting.
Yeah.
So that's what I find when people are doing peaks and troughs. It's because they're winning work and they're managing work. What they need to get to is a level where kind of, it's dead basic, but you've got your calendar, right? And you've got days and you've got times that could be considered key selling time and not key selling time. And that's a conversation for another time. But you split your week up, right? This block of time, and I know it's basic, but you book it out and you go, right, I've got to have 30-minute lunch. Let's just get it in. Let's not kid ourselves. You're going to do 30-minute lunch. Right. 10 till 12 on a Tuesday. That's going to be new business selling time. 2 till 4 on a Thursday. That's going to be new business selling time. You've got to start filling in your week. When you get to that point and you're picking up a phone or you're doing a video, turn your emails off. I'm on this session with you now. My emails are off, right? My emails are off because if they're not off, emails are coming through. I'm not focusing on you. I'm looking at my emails going, oh shit, I need to sort that problem out. Now, the reality is when I turn my emails back on in 5-10 minutes time, I'm going to have a world of shit that I'm going to have to deal with. But that's the same when you're prospecting, when you're looking for new business. A salesperson, in my experience, will do anything that they can in order to not do what's difficult, right? It's human nature. We all do it, right? So if I'm in the middle of making 2 or 3 calls or doing 2 or 3 videos and I get an email that comes up that goes, Dave, I've got an urgent job. It's 20,000 brochures we need to get out tomorrow. Instantly, I'm going, right, I need to sort this.
Yeah.
Now, what you don't realize is that call or that video or that prospecting time that you're in, that could be finding you a client that's going to deliver 50 or 100,000 pounds, right? So for me, it's all about setting your schedule, doing the right things at the right time consistently. You have a process that you follow, right? So if you looked at the seller's journey, the buyer's journey, whichever you look at, you've got different stages. You've got your research, you've got your outreach, you've got your initial phone call or video, you've got your meeting stage, you've got your proposal stage, you've got your order stage, you've got invoice stage, and all this kind of shit. Very rarely does anything get missed out. You don't go from sending a quick email to somebody to all of a sudden you've got an order. You've got to do a quote first, right? Or a proposal. So it's important that you do all these things and you do all these things consistently.
Yeah.
For me, you make your own luck, right? If you're sat at home, not making the calls, not putting the effort in, you ain't going to get the results. But if you are consistently doing these things every single day, irrelevant of how busy you are, whether you're dead quiet or you're dead busy, the best time to be prospecting and looking for new business is actually when you're busy. You feel better about yourself, in the same way, the best time to get a new job is when you've already got a job, right? So it's easier. You feel better about yourself. You're buzzing. You do all these things. You do them consistently well. And it's old-fashioned way of looking at it, but activity does breed results, and it's
Oh,
as
yeah.
simple as that.
I
Simple.
got taught a very long time ago that if you want that phone to ring in, you have to ring out.
Yeah,
The more you
yeah,
ring out, the more that phone's going to ring in.
yeah,
And it,
yeah,
it just is. That's just the way it is, isn't it? Do you know what's really interesting as well? Is when we're talking about these reps, whether you've got the high rollers that's flashing and then crashing, or whether you've got steady eddies that's just consistent. And the thing that I find so interesting is if we like working with the individual, like I find the result is the same in the end. So if you look
yeah,
at somebody and they'll do £500,000 in business this year, and they're the flashers. They'll do 10 grand and then they'll do three, and then they'll do 50, and then they'll do two, and then they'll do 50, and then they'll do and throughout the year they might end up on £500,000. You
yeah,
look at the steady Eddie, and they're doing, five, 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 10, 10, 10, whatever it is, and they end up at £500,000 as well.
yeah.
So they still end up at the same place, and the difference is I find is it's not always linked back to activity, although it can be traced to that. It's linked to them individuals. It's their thoughts,
Yeah. Who's
because
got the lowest blood pressure though, mate? And the lowest heart rate, you know?
yeah,
Like,
true.
again, mate, it just depends on, I think, the kind of business you work at. I'm sure I can't think of one, but there's so many times out there where, the hit them hard and, get instant results and a flurry suits that kind of business, and I think it just depends on kind of,
I agree. I think that you want that steady, don't you? You want that steadiness, but rather than having a steady five, like a steady 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, why not have a steady 100? Now, if you've
yeah,
got the
yeah,
person who's capable of doing 100, what we
yeah,
need to do is like the mindset's the issue. Like
yeah,
they believe in their head that they can only do £500,000. Now they might accelerate in the first quarter and do half of that. They might hit 250 in the first quarter, and then for the next three quarters they bounce all over the place and they still finish on a £500,000.
yeah.
Whereas if we can get them to win from within, like what's going on here? Why are you limiting yourself to five when we can maybe look at 1.5? Like let's
Yeah.
change that in terms of what's going on inside of here, and we'll get you consistently doing 100.
But I think, you're right. But I think a lot of that comes down to, I guess how teams are managed. If we talk about sales teams, how sales teams are managed, and the technology that people are using. I mean, how many people are still out there? I hate to use the word KPI, but I can't think of any other word. But how many people out there are still managing teams with no KPIs, right? No KPIs at all. All they're interested in is a number, right?
Right.
So all they give a shit about is the number that's invoiced at the end of the month. How many people literally are looking at, okay, so you need to bill £10,000 a month. Let's keep it simple, £10,000 a month. What's your quote conversion rate? 50%. Okay. Well, to bill £10,000 a month, you're going to need to quote £20,000 a month, right? And to get £20,000 worth of quotes, what activity do you need to do in order to typically generate £20,000 worth of quotes? And if you keep taking that right back to the beginning, you start to put in other metrics, which are number of phone calls, number of Zoom meetings, number of new contacts, right? So you start to get that traditional funnel, don't you? That kind of goes right at the top. It's new contacts. Then it's being funneled out, and slowly but surely, you're getting narrower and narrower and narrower, and you get to the real key metrics that go, this is how much I need to be quoting in order to order, to get this much ordered. And until you start as a leader, as a manager, director, whatever, up in the top and turning the pressure and turning the screw a little bit, excuse the expression, that bottom number is just going to consistently be that consistent. So, I'm sure, well, I know there are so many people out there at the moment that don't even do that. They just get hung up on a number and they're just going along the day. It boils down to dead basic stuff like who actually makes a list or whatever, or does a task list the night before, rather than doing it at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'll keep it simple, 9 o'clock in the morning, and waste a bit more time. Why aren't you doing it the night before? Why aren't you at the end of every day going, right, tomorrow I want to try and achieve this, right? And at the end of the day, why aren't you going, right, I set out to do this, I actually got it all done, or
Yeah,
actually I only got a bit of it done.
yeah,
If you only got a bit of it done, why did you only get a bit of it done?
sure.
And you know, I just think that it's all about, it's a bit old fashioned, but it's all about being prepared, and it's all about using your time wisely. And if you've got a meeting at 9 o'clock and you're getting up at 5 to 9 or whatever, and you're not preparing, you don't know what you need to get done in a day. How do you even know how effective you are?
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? And I think that to come back to what we're saying about character traits for salespeople is, traditionally speaking, the character traits of a salesperson is that they're not very organized,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is counterproductive really there, in terms of the fact that everything that we're saying that we need to do is we need to be organized, we need to do our research, we need to know our CPR, we need to we need all this information, and again, one of the character traits is that they just want to be active, they want to get busy. And I think that, look, the problem I have with KPIs, I love KPIs, by the way, but the problem I have with KPIs is most people's measuring KPIs on what I call lag statistics. So these are things that's already happened, but you can't
yeah,
change.
yeah.
You can't change this now. It's happened, it's gone, it's been, it's past. What you
Mm,
can change, though, is how that activity is used moving forward. And I think that a lot of people confuse activity with outcome.
yeah,
And so what they'll do is they'll be like, well, I'm active on LinkedIn, I'm active on social media, I'm active doing this, and that activity is not linked and tied directly into an outcome. And I think that you just touched on it a little bit then. Is like, right, okay, cool. This is the outcome. We need a sale. So
yeah,
how many how many proposals do we need to send to get a deal? So we need to send, we convert 25%, or let's just
yeah,
say we come 1 in 5, for example, or 1 in 4.
yeah,
So, okay, what do we need to do to be able to send 4 proposals? Well, we need to, make contact with 50 people a week. We need to do 25 phone calls. We need to send 100 emails. We need to write 1 new blog article. We need to, and it's just exactly the same as what you said,
yeah.
what's leading them down to there. But most people's not thinking that way. They're just
No.
thinking, well, I'm putting the activity in, Dave. Like, shit, why is it not happening?
Yeah, most people are probably thinking, I've got 8 hours in front of me. I just want to fill my 8 hours without any thought in terms of what works, what don't work, what they should be doing when. They just, you know, and as as kind of managers, that that has become really difficult during the pandemic to manage. Really difficult because all of a sudden you've not got visibility, right? Yes, you've got technology. HubSpot's a fantastic tool, as we've talked about many times before. At the touch of a button, I can see, the number of emails my team spent, the number of replies they've got. I can see the number of video outreaches. I can see what their conversion rate is. I can see, how many days it takes to close a sale. We've got all of these metrics that are just incredible,
Incredible.
and like you wouldn't even have any of that like 5-10 years ago.
Mm.
So the technology allows us to um, have a finger on the pulse, for want of a better word, a heartbeat, call it what you like,
Mm.
which is incredible.
Do you
But
think do you think that technology, as great as it is, has also made people a little bit lazy?
I
And what I mean by that is they rely on that template too much. They rely on the fact that they can press a button and the information's done. That, rather than putting that little bit extra care, attention, and work in there, everything's done for them.
Yeah, and I think you actually touched on this in your training yesterday, on one of your sessions, was around looking at templates for people and making obviously making people's lives easier. But it's not just about the template, it's about taking the time to understand the content and the context of what you're putting down in that template,
100%.
and take the time to research the prospect, but don't just say you've researched it. You got to evidence it.
Oh God,
So
yeah. And I said
so
that,
if
didn't I?
you did,
Don't be
mate,
a
yes,
douche. Don't say you've
yeah,
read the article and not actually gone and actually read it.
yeah. You could even go as far to say, I don't know, like you've just the guys just put out a podcast and something that really touched or pulled on your heartstrings at 2 minutes 37 in. was, you
Yes.
know. So really make it really personal, and
Unbelievable.
that's what you've got to do. I mean, it's no different really, is it, from 20 years ago? You'll be sat in a meeting, and you're in a meeting in the guy's office, and you look around, and straight away you're looking, right, where's his photographs? Can I see any photographs? What football team does he support?
Yeah.
Is that his wife that's there with his kids, or is it his granddaughter, or what is it?
Yeah.
All you're doing is you're gathering information, aren't you,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
use later on in the sales
Yeah.
process.
But again, only use it if it's actually true. And I think that's the problem, isn't it? Is
Yeah,
that if you're sat in that office and you see that he supports Chelsea, don't tell him that you support Chelsea as well, man, because
no,
you're going to get sniffed out. Just like
yeah,
if he's got like fishing trophies on his cabinet, don't start talking about fishing unless you're an avid fisher yourself.
yeah,
Do you know what
yeah.
I mean? Because you're just going to look a complete fool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's about, I think it's about doing your own work and doing your research, and yeah. But there are, you're right. There are so many tools available now, and you know, I guess if you're not careful, you could get complacent with it, and you could be considered to be lazy.
Mm.
Um, but I think that's why you've got to kind of keep it personal. And we was having this conversation the other day. I would rather one of my sales guys not commit to contacting 20, 30 people a day, but commit to contacting 5 people a day properly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I think now we live in a world where it's not, yes, numbers are important and activity is important, but I think that personalization, that person centered approach is more applicable and needed now than it's ever been. So let's focus on less, and it's the old fashioned less is more. And I think, that's certainly what my team's now starting to look at, is how can we be more personal? How can we be more effective by not going for like 50 calls a day or 100 calls a day, but going for less, but make them more personalized?
And I agree, but with a slight disagreement on that. And I'll tell you
Yeah,
why. I think it all depends on the value of the order, the average value order.
yeah,
Because if you're chasing 25 quid orders, like you spending 20 minutes, half an hour time doing research on them, trying to build personalization, like it's just not worth it for the 25 quid average order. You
no,
know, it's
but
got to be
that's,
numbers, call. Whereas
yeah,
when you're talking, a grand, 15, 5, 10 grand orders and things like that as well, then put the effort in because like you'll win. I agree with
yeah.
you completely.
One of the things that we have done really well over the years is really profiling who our customers are and who we want them to be. Looking at certain sectors, certain individuals. Going back, 10, 15 years ago, our customer were really astute technical print buyers, right? New print like the back of their hand, predominantly men. Men that had got many years experience in buying print, new print like the back of the hand.
Yeah.
Further from the truth now,
Yeah.
it couldn't be further away. We now deal with marketing people, degree educated people,
The
people that
message
spend,
changed.
yeah, people spending their lives, Netflix and cloud-based technology. The messaging has totally changed. That's not to say that they don't understand print, but they don't understand it at the technical level that people before did.
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's about profiling your customers and understanding what your ideal customer is, what the average order value is, and what you want to get out of it.
Yeah.
And when you're in a situation where you've got low value products, you want to, what's the word? It's stack it high, sell it cheap, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Then yeah, you're right. But when you're talking about a service or a product that's got an average order value of £2,000 and above,
Yeah.
when you're really looking for customers that spend £50,000 a year and above,
Put the effort in.
that's really where you've got to put the
Yeah.
effort in. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
totally agree with you. 100%. Same
There's
thing.
no right or wrong, by the way. It's whatever your model is. So
It's been a scientist again, isn't it? It's
yeah,
split testing. It's like, and this is what I said to people all the time. They're like, John, like you're saying, don't cold call as much. I'm saying, no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if you cold call and it works, keep doing it.
yeah,
Don't stop. But if you're cold calling and it's not really working, maybe just look at some of the ways that you can do and split test a little bit because cold calling does work. It
yeah,
still works. It will, and I believe it will always work. you know, it just doesn't work as well as it once did. Like email marketing works, just not. You just don't get the open rates like you once did.
Yeah.
Social media is going to be the same way soon. Like you look at Facebook, how they choke the shit out of your feeds right now.
Yeah.
You know, you've got 1,000 people that like your page, and you'll be lucky if 100 people see it.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
I think again, it's like it's just test all the time. And
Sure.
who was it who said it? I forget the name now. They were saying like, you know, on about marketing in terms of spending and advertising on marketing. They're saying, you know what, 50% of our marketing works and 50% of it doesn't work. We just don't know which way around it goes.
Which way around it is, yeah. No, it's good. It's interesting, and you know, sales marketing. It is.
I love it.
Yeah, you literally talk about it all day.
So, which I think we're going to have to bring it in for a landing, aren't we? Because otherwise we could talk
we'd be
about
all day, mate. Yeah, and I've had like 5 coffees this morning, and I'm desperate for the loo. So, without wanting to sit here in a big puddle, we need.
Bit too much information, though, to be honest.
Yeah.
No, Dave, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking for you. Anyone what's watching or listening to this, where can they find out more about, you know, like what you guys do, and, you know, get involved with you and
yeah,
like,
sure. There's various channels. We've got a fantastic website which is BBPress.co.uk. On there's all sorts of information around, you know, us as a business, our Be Brilliant Club, which is a really interesting club aimed at, you know, creatives, marketing people, loads of, you know, there's not a hard sell on there at all. There's not even a sell. It's just, you know, it's hints, tips, ebooks, downloads, blog posts, all useful stuff that people will find interesting. You know, we've got a great following on LinkedIn. We've got a great following on Twitter. Just Google B&B-Press. And we're in Rotherham, South Yorkshire. So
excellent, mate. Excellent. Yeah. Dave, it's been absolutely wonderful again.
Cheers, John.
We could do this all day long. But, yeah, it's good, mate. It's good. Thanks for your time.
No, anytime, mate. Take care. Bye-bye.
All the best.